The sun is driving all kinds of changes on the planet, including earth changes, earthquakes, increase in earthquakes and volcanoes, and other such kinds of things. It's driving change in weather and in the climate in particular. And what's happening is, along with the center of the galaxy, which we'll mention in a minute, what it's doing is changing the biology of humans.
Welcome in. I'm Kimberly. I'm so glad you're here today. We have such an interesting and fascinating guest. I'm really excited for you to meet him. If you're enjoying this content, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And if you want to keep track of what's happening around the planet, but it feels a little overwhelming, you might want to sign up for our Friday morning email newsletter. The link is in the description box down below. Every Friday morning, we send out a very short, very informative, very free email newsletter highlighting what we think are the important events going on the planet. Super easy to sign up. You just click the link down below. I think you're going to love it. I am so excited to have a conversation with someone. I just said he and I are longtime friends, only we haven't met yet. I have been following him for quite some time. Welcome in John Petersen, founder and director of the Arlington Institute, a think tank in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. Welcome in, John.
Kimberly, thanks for having me. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation. For those who aren't familiar with you, tell us a little bit about what the Arlington Institute does. And then, of course, we'll talk about links and stuff at the end of the video, and I'll have everything linked down below. But a think tank is kind of a term that maybe we don't really understand. Why don't you tell us what you do there?
It can be a noun or a verb. People use it both ways. Well, I back in 1989, I started the Arlington. I came to Washington from Chicago and started the Arlington Institute. And my background is in the military and politics and a bunch of other kinds of things. And so I was trying. My interest was in trying to change the definition of national security, work with the leadership of the military to try to get them to see that just killing people and breaking things wasn't the only thing that they were about, and that there was environmental things and social value shifts and technology revolutions and all kinds of stuff that was coming there, all of which were just bona fide, no kidding, kind of national security issues, and so that you could kind of widen the aperture so they look more broadly. And so we started the Arlington Institute in Arlington, Virginia in '89, and I spent easy 10, 12 years working primarily, like I say, with the leadership of the Navy and the Marine Corps and so on. Because that was my background. I'd spent a good bit of time in the Navy and the Naval Reserve, and so I knew those guys. And I also had been the state chairman for Gary Hart's presidential campaign in Illinois in '84 and '86 and '88. And so, I knew my way around town, and it was kind of a natural kind of progression. As it turns out, we had some business problems that turned up in some guy stuck me for $500,000, as a matter of fact. So we decided to move from Chicago to Washington, and which precipitated all of this. And the first project that I got was from the Department of Defense, from the Secretary of Defense. And he's essentially sent me, the project was run around the world and look at how everybody looks at the future and see if you can come up with a new synthetic, a better next generation kind of methodology for doing that. And so I did that. And of course, I was looking at it in terms of this kind of changing the direction of how you think about national security. And then one day somebody came to me and said, "Oh, you're a futurist." I said, "What's that?" And they said, "Oh, well, somebody that studies in the future." So that's I've turned out to be one of about 200, maybe, professional futurists who study and think about and write. I've written 3 books, given talks all over the world uh, about the methodologies and the processes and how to anticipate and how to think about futures. I guess I'm best known in the industry, if you will, for a book I wrote about how to think about wild card, big surprise events, and how they come, how you anticipate them so that they don't show up and just scare you to death or whatever, eat your lunch, whatever. And so that's what I do. So then after that, the government of Singapore got a hold of us, and we ended up building a national surprise anticipation center, which was the first capability of its kind in the world, tying all the agencies of government together, sweeping the horizon on the internet, looking for little weak signals and early indicators about what's inbound. That was a wonderful project. And then more recently, we've started to look at this big revolution that's inbound, the emergence of a new human, and subsequently a new world. And we kind of position ourselves as being, we're in the business of facilitating the transition to the new world. And that's what we do. And we're located in Berkeley Springs, which is a little resort town, 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore. And so we're away from all the stuff in Washington. Don't have to worry about it.
Far enough away so that the cooties don't get you. Yeah. I am curious, and the reason I wanted to have you on is because you know all the people that know all the stuff that's happening on the planet. Let's have a discussion about what you see in the next 10 years. Where are we heading? And I would imagine that your interest in wildcard events, you had no idea how topical that was going to be as we move forward, because it certainly seems like that's all we're getting these days is wildcard events, one after another, and they're accelerating to the point that are almost weekly.
Yes.
So what kind of bring us up to speed, and people are very concerned about what's going to happen in 2024. Not only that, but then, like you said, the next 10 years, where are we headed and how are we going to navigate what seems to be a very unstable planet?
Well, yeah, you make an interesting point, because what we're into is a period of exponential change, and exponential change goes, higher and higher and approaches running vertically. And it's defined, you can define it in this particular case in any of a number of ways. One way is the way you've just done it, in terms of all these wild cards, one piled on top of another, cascading into a future in an environment that's never happened before, that you can define that as chaotic and uncertainty and the breakdown of the old system. I believe that the old system is imploding, going to generate a vacuum for the emergence of a new world, which is the area that we're playing in. Another way, though, that you can think about this exponential change is saying that breakthroughs on top of breakthroughs on top of breakthroughs, that new inventions, new ideas, new events, all kinds of things that attend and run in parallel, I guess, with the implosion of the old system. And so you say, okay, so what's driving all of this, and where is it all going? Well, the big picture, to me at least, is that we have a combination of things that are going on here. I was once driving out, it's a 2-hour drive from Washington out here, and we used to have Lee Carroll and Cryon come out to our transition talks. We have a series every month of a speaker that we bring in, and we live stream it all over. Anyway, Lee was, we were driving in, and Lee was talking about, well, we've just passed the marker. And I said, so what's the marker? This is, in 2014 or something like that. And he said, just passed the marker. And I said, so what's a marker? And he says, well, it's just this time when everything. And I said, no, what's the marker? And I said, I'll tell you what the marker is. The marker is, if it's a time certain, what it means is that there are cosmological alignment. There is a certain kind of window in the cosmos that opens up. That's what time is. Time is defined by the different kind of configurations that we have, that we live within, that all kind of defined, in this varying sweep. It's defined by different things. And so what's happening here is that on one hand, you've got essentially a cosmological window that's opening up. We can talk about that here in a minute. And at the same time, what you've got is you have a group of people, of humans, who have reached a place that they can kind of run through the window, run through the open door, if you will. And that this happens every once in a while. The Ra books, the Law of One kind of folks, went through 3 years of all of this channeling and stuff, driven by a physicist who was, trying to be very kind of systematic and detailed about it all. And what they said is that there are these kind of episodic periods when the time is just kind of right. I don't remember them defining it much more than that, but the time is kind of right. And then there is what they called a harvesting, where you kind of cream the top off of those who are ready to move on to the next stage, and that's what happens. But I would suggest to you that there is a timing. How do you define the timing? You define the timing in kind of cosmological terms. And so, what are those? Well, first of all, this solar system is moving into a new area of space that is completely redefined, not completely, but significantly redefined in terms of both electromagnetics and in terms of chemistry. There are more the magnetic component of it's like flying through a cloud. I'm a pilot. It's like flying into a cloud, right? So you're into a different environment that's composed fundamentally differently from the non-area where you're in the clear and you don't. And so when you go in there, what you find out is that you got to start from kind of the basics, and that is that we live in an all-electric world, an all-electric universe. And what if you start with that assumption, and by the way, that's pretty easy to explain, because if you work your way down to atomic and subatomic levels and you ask yourself what kind of holds it all together, well, it's all electrical and magnetic kind of forces. So if you build it up into large aggregate kind of complex systems, all they are is derivatives of these electric and magnetic kind of forces. And so what I can tell you, my degree is in electrical engineering, that you can electrically engineer, all of this kind of stuff, and it affects, and they interact and they affect each other, the fields and so on. That's how it all, that's what we do every day with the electronics and technology that we have. And so as we're moving into this cloud, that's really changing, what it does is it affects, remember, everything's electric. It affects the sun, and it affects the earth, and it affects everything in a kind of structural, broad environmental way. It's a kind of a linear increase. It's not big like this because you're driving into the cloud. And so, but it changes the whole environment. And what that does is generates a context where the stars, like the sun, that are leading into that space, you can look forward into that, and you can see the stars that are in front of us that are moving into the space. And what they do is they accrete more energy. And so they get to the place where they have big solar explosions. They have solar flares. David Wilcock has done a useful, interesting, good job of doing research on this. And he said a couple of years ago that just within the previous 2 years, that something like 21 different stars that all have big explosions, out there in front of where we're going. And so there's not only is the sun doing something differently, and it's generating different energies that qualitatively quite a bit, quantitatively, and as well as qualitatively. And that, by the way, parenthetically, is driving the climate change on the planet. It's not humans. The relative influence of humans is about this big compared to the sun, which is, I can't get in the frame. It's so big. Anyway, so the sun is driving all kinds of changes on the planet, including earth changes, earthquakes, increase in earthquakes and volcanoes and other such kinds of things. It's driving change in weather and in the climate in particular. And what's happening is, along with the center of the galaxy, which we'll mention in a minute, what it's doing is changing the biology of humans. What we essentially have is the 90+% that all of our smart scientists think are junk DNA just because they can't figure it out. And so it's kind of arrogant to kind of say that it's junk just because you can't figure it out. But as it turns out, it has all kinds of capabilities that are left over from a long, long time ago when this was originally kind of designed. And what's happening is that the strings of dormant DNA are being enabled and are being activated by this energy that's coming out of the sun. But it's also coming out of the center of the galaxy, because as our solar system works its way around the galactic plane, remember, we're in a spiral galaxy, and it's like a platter, like a dinner plate, right? And why is it organized like that? I mean, some galaxies are like big balls and, different kind of configurations. Why is this one like a dinner plate? It's because the organizing energy in the center of the galaxy has got a narrow beam width that just shines in a very narrow way out across into space. And that then organizes all of the stars and within that kind of narrow beam width. And what happens is that our solar system is going above and below. It oscillates as it goes around that plane, and every 12,000 years it goes up and down and up and down, and it cuts through the middle of the beam. All right. And so just think about it. Where's the strongest kind of energy that's in the whole galaxy? Well, it's the middle of that beam that's holding everything together in that plane. And as we go through the middle of that, which is about a 36-year period that's centered on December the 12th, 2020, 2012, as you go through the middle of that, what you do is you get this rapid increase. And if you plotted it, it'd go like this, as you work your way through the middle of it. And that too then affects the sun and the planets and people and so on. And so you've got that happening. And at the same time, I don't want to make this too lengthy, but you've got these series of waves of energy that are coming out of the center of the galaxy. And so they come and go down, and then another one comes. And so you've got this combination of all of these things. That's the window. You get the combination of all of these things coming at the same time. And in the aggregate, that's an unusual kind of period. And so what it presents is the opportunity for a rapid kind of change and evolution into a new space. I mean, there's other variables involved, but that's the basic thing. And then that's coupled, as I suggest, with humans and where our level of kind of emotional and spiritual and energetic development is. I think of it as expanded awareness, that we're moving into a space where, however you want to define it, increase in consciousness, awakening, you call it whatever you'd like. the basic notion is a expanded awareness. So we know more of who we are and how the larger reality kind of works. And then you learn how to operate into that kind of space. And so that's what's happening, as far as I can tell anyway. And so it's an extraordinary period where amazing change is happening in a very short period of time, which is generally characterized, as we see all around us, of the implosion of the old system. There's no way you're going to fix it. It's kind of a waste of time to try to make it, patch it up and try to make it better. What we need to be doing is looking at a new world, and we need to start to design a new world. And that's part of what we're trying to do here at the Arlington Institute.
Yeah, well, that was really informative, John. Thank you. Can you dive a little bit deeper into how these energies are creating the drama on the planet or all the conflict between humans? How does that translate into what's going on, all the conflict within governments and
Mm.
different factions, all the division? Can you tell us a little bit more of how you see that playing out?
Well, it's interesting when you look at it, and you can find this out kind of as a derivative of looking at the whole climate change issue. I spent about a year and a half looking at really the origins of and the driving forces and so on of the climate change early on, and did on our website, there's a kind of an hour and 20-minute kind of summary that all says it's going to get cold because it's all driving toward getting cold. And so your question is,
Can you walk
say.
us through how it is creating all this conflict
Yeah,
between
okay.
humans on the planet?
So when you do the research on climate change, what you find out is that not only do you have concurrence between the kind of things that happen on the, if you're trying to figure out, what drives the climate, what's the biggest driver of the climate, you find out it's the sun. And you find out it's the sun because you get there are graphs that show as the energy coming off, the cosmic energy coming off of the sun, the cosmic particles and such, increase and decrease. You have similar kind of increases and decreases in going back 400 and something million years. I don't know, a long time. That there are these regular kind of cycles and it changes, right? Same way the sun changes. Well, what you also find out is that as you have sunspot cycles and other such things, you have a direct correlation of kind of the social cohesion, stability of humanity on the planet. We're all electric, right? It's all works together. It's all a big soup of electric fields and influences. I mean, you're probably interested in astrology. How does astrology work? It's all electric. You have this different, as you change the configurations of these big chunks of electricity that are all running around in the space, it changes the kind of the signature on the planet. And that's what gets results in the kind of changes that we have. And so what you've got is that you've got all these energetic changes going on, and you find out that wars and peace and such all kind of follow that relationship. Now they follow that relationship, and they also follow a relationship that's described by the Hindus as yugas, that there are major kind of eras that have predictable kind of underlying characteristics. And again, this drives you into these cosmological kinds of things, because the kind of the driving, organizing force process underneath the yugas is thought to be that we live in a binary star system. Almost every star that astronomers see exists in pairs. There are two of them closely related together. And ours is one of the very few that they look at and say, there's only one star. Well, maybe there isn't. What the Hindus all suggest is that there is another star, and it's a dark star. It's a dark dwarf, whatever they call them, and you can't see it, but it's still out there. And what they do is that they rotate in together and in this relationship. And so they come flying, increasing, accelerating toward each other. They pass by each other and turn and then start to decelerate till they come out to the far end. And then they're the slowest. And then they turn and start to accelerate. And what that sets up is four rather kind of distinct eras. It's almost like seasons on the Earth or something like that. And so, and they're kind of defined by the relative acceleration. And so, as the planets, as the two stars increase in acceleration, what you get is increased stability. You get more innovation and creativity. You get flowering of capabilities and stuff. And then as they turn past each other and start to slow down, then it starts to get screwy again, and people start doing stupid things. And then you get the kind of dark age kind of things when it gets out at the outside. Well, that seems to be the best kind of explanation of what's happening. And what we're doing is we're working our way. We've made the turn and we're headed back in toward each other. And so things, you're just coming out of the most disruptive period of time, but you're headed into what many spiritual, historical, indigenous, other kind of groups all say is generally characterized as 1,000 years of peace periods of time. And that's where we're going right now.
So when I look out at the world, it seems chaotic. It seems like there's one piece of dramatic news after another. But what I'm wondering underneath it, because the changes of energy on the planet, is I know that there's individuals in their garages coming up with these brilliant concepts and great ideas that we're not hearing about. And I'm curious about the growth of that.
Yeah.
And then I'm also curious about where you see us going in 10 years. Clearly, we've got a lot of stuff to clean up or systems to break down, information to come to light. But I am just so fascinated thinking about what's going to be coming into light, what's going to be created, what's going to be developed, that's going to completely transform the Earth human. Can you talk, as a futurist, where do you see us going, like in the next 10 years?
Yeah. Well, this is the crux of all of this. This is why we're all here, as a matter of fact, to play into this kind of space and help define and describe and birth this kind of new world. And so what's happening, humans, you can find, this is nothing new. When you're driven into a corner, necessity is the mother of invention, right? It's as simple as those kinds of aphorisms. When you're driven into a corner, then you try to find a solution to get out of the corner. And that's what's happening to humanity writ large. That's the essence of this notion of evolutionary jump or an enlightenment or awakening or everything. We wouldn't do it if we didn't need to, essentially. There needs to be kind of if everything's okay, I mean, you can sit back and eat bonbons and whatever you do, you got no reason to make anything better because it's all great. And so it's the kind of the pressure of these, the events and the changes that give you the impetus to rise to the occasion. And so that's what's happening. So that's what's happening. And so you can bet on exactly what you're talking about. When you sit here and look at how Google and Facebook and whoever, the NSA and all these guys are just embedding themselves and putting their links into the middle of who we are and trying to control us, that somebody in their garage, as you say, is trying to find a solution to that problem. And they're going to invent a new internet. They're going to invent new ways to operate on the internet that give you independence. There's a whole bunch of things. And, it becomes an issue of timing. And we can talk a little bit about that because what you don't want to do is put one of those into the middle of the situation where everything is solid and stable and the other guys all have all kinds of money and time and intelligence services and whatever, so that they can come and smack you, which they certainly would do. No, you got to find the right kind of time to do this thing. So number one, and I've suggested this for years, that there are any of a number of new ideas and things that are going to come downstream that are going to be the fabric that provide the platform and the fabric of this emergent new world to operate on. Let me suggest to you that AI, chat box, and these kinds of technologies certainly can be dystopian. They can drive us into this place where they can, the technocracy will control us all and turn us into a Matrix kind of movie. But it also has a distinct possibility of being able to empower and activate and accelerate the track toward this new world. What we need, by the way, is to get our own big database that is not driven by the mindset of the people in San Francisco about how what we're interested in doing is digitizing my library and other people's libraries and trying to integrate those into a database that thinks in ways that we do about the kind of options going forward. So anyway, so all those things are going to come along, but what has to happen is the timing has got to get right. Okay, so the timing is, and so again, it's almost kind of like a transitional window or something. And we're into it right now. And what it's going to run for, if we kind of looked out over the next 6 years or 7 years or something like that, here's the best kind of guess that I can find. And I follow a guy named Martin Armstrong, who is
and Socrates,
and Socrates. And what Martin Armstrong, for what viewers who don't know, is an economist down in Florida, and he years ago, 40 plus years ago, built the first AI program, and he used it for the trading and financial advice and stuff like that. Became the most successful financial advice firm in the world.
And the FBI didn't like that very much.
It was the CIA, yeah.
Oh, was it? Okay, one of those agencies, yeah.
Yeah, they did, and the point is that he named it Socrates, and the point is that it's never been wrong in 40 years.
I know.
And so that, so here's what Socrates says. I'll give you a quick story. So I went to Martin Armstrong's conference in 2019 in Orlando in October of 2019. He stood up there and said, Socrates, he says, I don't know what this means. Socrates says that on the 20th and 21st of January next year, something really big is going to happen. And he said, I don't know what it is. Maybe Hillary decides that she wants to come into it was in the middle of the convention or into the election. Maybe Hillary decides she wants to come. He says, I don't know what it is. So you get to January the 20th and 21st, and you look around and you say, I don't know what's happening. And, by the end of the day on the 21st, it suddenly just smacks you in the head. COVID, and he hit it to the date. And that's what Socrates does. It's all based upon cyclical relationships and stuff. So it's, from a professional point of view as a futurist, it's the most accurate kind of, one of the most accurate kind of inputs that you can use, that you can find to begin to anticipate what's inbound. Here's what Socrates says. Socrates says we're in the middle, started saying this 2 years ago, that we'd be in the middle of World War III right now. And there are all kinds of things that are suggesting that, by the way, that there's stuff going on that you don't know, that's under the table, and everybody's poking each other and doing things. And so we're almost certainly in the middle of World War III right now. More importantly, Socrates says that by 2025 to 2027, there is a global civil war. Now, when he stood up and said that at a subsequent conference that I was, he does this once a year. I thought about it and said, that doesn't make sense. Civil wars are national. They're not global. They're national. They're two factions within a country that are fighting each other for dominance And who would, so what is this? And it took me a couple of months to think about it. And suddenly it occurred to me, oh, this is a planet-wide uprising of the citizenry and against their governments. And then the remote viewers, Dick Allgaier, who I noticed that you've talked to, Dick Allgaier and his guys all come up and say, it all revolves around the notion of betrayal. That there is this kind of solidified kind of meme giant kind of idea that kind of comes together, and everybody says, they screwed us. We gave them our money, we gave them our trust and everything else, and they have taken advantage of it. And then you would get people in the streets and other kinds of stuff. Have you noticed, anywhere, anybody kind of tying up the biggest cities in the world? But I mean, they're doing it in Tel Aviv now, and they're trying to bring down the government in Paris and France, and just on and on. I mean, it's certainly in the Netherlands with the farmers and so on. What you've got is this rising sense of betrayal that we've been taken advantage of, and so that goes from 2025 to 2027. And what Marty says that comes out of the back end of that is that you have this disintegration of the many existing kind of political and social relationships. Well, what that means in our terms is that the United States of America comes apart. Is that possible? Well, show me how many maps there are on the internet about how the different fragmented, sections of the U.S. Texas goes one way, and California, Washington and Oregon and Northern California go another way, and New England is another way. And anyway, that's there are clear fissure lines within the social and political systems in this country that could be aggravated clearly, by the events of the time. And so what Marty says, that not only in the United States but all over the world, there are all these separatist kind of movements that get emboldened and fueled by the events that have just transpired the previous 2 weeks. So then 2 years, and then what's interesting for us who live here is that it reconstitutes itself into 5 separate countries in North America between 2027 and 2032. Now, you don't know what that means. I mean, you can hear the words and it kind of goes by your head, but you do not even begin to understand the implications of
and that seems very fast to me.
Oh, that's the point. That it all comes apart and
2027
reconfigures itself within 5 years. That's just nuts if you know anything about how that government and the economy and the whatever and everything kind of works. It's just amazingly complex. And I've come to the conclusion that the only way that happens is that it's empowered and enabled by artificial intelligence, that you can get answers faster and the metabolism of the whole system kind of work. Now, for our audience and for the good people who are watching this is not about chaos, and this is not about uncertainty and the world going to hell in a handbasket and all that, although there's parts of it that'll happen. What this is the opening for the emergence of a new world. And in particular, it's the emergence of a new country. That there is the distinct possibility here that you've never seen before, that's for sure, that we could get together and we could start a new country, or be part of starting a new country that would be built on a whole new set of principles and new ideas and new values and other such stuff. Because if it all collapses and it all kind of starts to come together, if we thought about it a little bit beforehand, we could start to say, well, here's an alternative. We do this. And you put up a flag, and with the internet and so on, people come, they say, oh, I like that. I mean, here in Berkeley Springs, we've already had about a dozen people move here in the last couple of years, just because we're starting to think about these kinds of ideas and we're trying to build a community around the basics thing. We're doing farming, community farming. We got a dozen people down at our farm who are working to do food security. We're doing communication security. We're doing, all kinds of things like that to be able to kind of surf through the middle of this thing and be productive, proactive rather than reactive, I guess is what it should be.
And I think that's why Penny Kelly's book, The Revival, is so important, because she literally walks through all the questions of how do you want to live? What kind of world do you want to live in? Can you take your experience in education and what you've learned from those around you and give us just a few little tips for the viewers of how to walk through this
Sure.
in a way to keep it more comfortable, to keep it less, I suppose it could feel very scary and unnerving and unsettling. I understand that we're having expanded capabilities, and even myself, I can look back to what I perceived 10 years ago, and it seems like it was so dark back then,
Yeah.
or that today, my perception of the world around me is completely different, and I think so much broader and bigger. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one. I mean, this is what's happening to humans. What can you share with us about how to best walk through the next few years in a way that's going to help us succeed easier with less stress? And then maybe we can have you come back. I'd love to have a longer discussion if you could come back and talk about what can we look forward to? What
Sure.
are the exciting things that
Sure.
are going to make this journey really worth it to keep pushing forward?
Yeah, we could certainly do that. How do you get from here to there?
Yeah.
It's really interesting because it's a space that none of us have ever experienced before. There's a kind of a fundamental problem, and that is the reason the way human beings make sense out of things is that they do pattern recognition. And so we all bring into the room all of our experiences and whatever that have described for us different patterns about what a chair is and how gravity works and whatever. And we define reality with the terms of those patterns. And if something is happening that we don't have a pattern, then we do not understand it, and then it starts to generate great deal of uncertainty, depending upon the magnitude of the thing, a great deal of uncertainty and stress because something's happening and you don't understand. So that's as you've suggested, that's the basic kind of environment, contextual kind of problem that we're moving into. We're like explorers, like Lewis and Clark or something. We're going into an unknown kind of space for which we have no analog. We don't have any history. We don't know how this stuff works. And what we've got to do is kind of be open to whatever kind of happens. Now, the problem with having all of these mental models, these patterns in our mind, is that all of that is what has given us, in general, it's called a paradigm. It's the framework by which you make sense in your life. All of us have a different one. Some of them are relatively closely aligned and associated. Some of them are really quite different. And we understand how reality works, and we built this internal kind of structure that all generates consistency, and we say, oh, that's what's happening because, and so on. And we drive all of the events into these little pockets in our minds of things that we think we understand and that seem to make sense to us. Now, that becomes problematic, as I've just suggested, when you move into a space that is where you have no experience with it at all. And so now the general, and if the magnitude of the events that are coming are large enough, then what it does is it generates anxiety, uncertainty, emotional kind of stress, which turns into fear. And let me tell you that that kills all of our ability to think logically and to be creative and to find solutions. Okay, so what you really don't want going into this thing is that you don't want to drive yourself into fear. So the question is, so how do you enter this amazing, explosive kind of space without fear? Well, one way, there are a number of components. One of them is that you have to, if you will, trust in the underlying process. There needs to be, it's almost kind of spiritual, biblical, whatever, I came out of very conservative religions, and, it was all about faith and trust and all those kinds of things. But that's kind of a significant element. You got to believe. You don't know anything for certain, but you got to believe that there's purpose and direction and intelligence and, frankly, love and benign kind of aspects of this whole process, and that it's not meaningless and it's not all random. So if you and that's just a kind of a mindset that one has to, I don't know you can't prove that, except you aggregate all these things that you've learned and you say, this is going somewhere and it's going to make sense. And it's probably happened on other planets and other places. We're not the only one in the world. And so it's got to make sense. You got to believe, by the way, that it's benign. This is not a stupid experiment to just blow things up and see what it looks like. This is about the evolution of humanity, and people like Penny Kelly will tell you that, oh yeah, it's going on all over the place. These folks from other planets or other star systems go out and see different planets, and and they help them along and so on. And so you got to believe something like that's worthwhile, and you can't just pull that out of the air, frankly. You've got to, it's a product of, what you've read and where you've been and what kind of workshops you've been to and what kind of people you talk to. You have to lean forward into this space. You cannot be passive. You cannot sit there and say, well, I think it's all going to work out all right, or I don't know what to do, so I don't know what to do, because this is going to torque the whole kind of environment and the context going forward. So another important point is you've got to be engaged. This is about proactive. And why is it about proactive? First of all, just because you need to be able to effectively play in this kind of space rather than have it do it, to you. You got to surf in this wave going forward, and you surf this wave, and it's interesting because you have to surf this wave with new ideas. Remember, you build patterns from the past, from all your experiences, and we're going into a space that is not like the past. So you can't bring forward the baggage that you've had in the past and say, this will tell me how to get into this one. It doesn't work that way. This is about new ideas and new things. And so and the problem with that is, remember that all these ideas and things gave us our sense of stability and security and predictability and all of the stuff that gives us comfort. And so you're into a place where it's naturally uncomfortable. That is the kind of the transition in this evolutionary jump, if you will, if you want to call it that. And so the way that has to work is that you have to be permeable. You running up this exponential curve. By the way, we haven't talked about aliens and other kind of things and all kinds of wild cards and things that can come in here, really run things off in a different direction. But as you run up that thing, what you've got is by definition, it's defined by new ideas, like I've talked about, piled on top of each other. And those new ideas come through the cracks in the old paradigm. They are, and if you're locked into your paradigm and you've read your book and it's told you the way everything goes and you just believe that and you've never tried anything else, then you've got a fence that no light can come through. And what you've got to do is start to open things up so the cracks of light and ideas and things come through, and you start to grab them and you say, that could be part of this, or this could be part of this or that. You've got to realize that you're moving from one state to another one. And so you've got to open up the essence of kind of who you are and how you operate. And again, you lean forward. You got to be engaged in this. It's got to be almost a everyday kind of thing that says, how do I become this new human? What are the parts of this? What is it about this new human? And just briefly, because we're about out of time here, the new human is, this energy coming through is activating DNA, and you're starting to get telepathy and the ability to manifest, and a host of other see auras and know who people are and what they're thinking and whatever. They're just a bunch of stuff that's already existent all over the planet, but it's kind of just popping up and it's starting to accrete around everything. And so that's the indication of where we're going. And so into that space, then you're going to have all kinds of new capabilities, but you've got to bet on the come here. You got to lean into it. And you've got to, another important point is that you've got to start to build a vision, an idea about what a new world would look like, so that you've got something you're pointed to. I mean, if you don't know where Baltimore is and you want to get to Baltimore, then you don't know which direction to go, right? And so you've got to have some idea about what an alternative world might look like. And so one of the projects we have here at the Arlington Institute is to build a global communications and collaboration platform so that millions of people can all work together to literally build a new model for a new world. And it's got feedback, recursive kind of function so that the thing you can adapt it as new things show up. But if you don't know where you're going, you don't know where you're going, right? And so you got to know where you're going. So the combination of all these things, I can't kind of underemphasize the notion that you've got to just have trust into the system. You got to have this sense inside of you that this is kind of cool and it's really going somewhere neat. And there's a lot of aspects to it that we're not prepared or capable, equipped to be able to fully understand what's going on right now. But you've got to just believe. It's like going to college or something, or in the military is a great example, because they put you in the middle of something and you don't know what's going on, but you trust, and you've seen that people get out of the back end of it all right and everything. And, they shave your hair and make you all stupid, but you trust in the system. And that's what I'm just trying to communicate. I'm not arguing for joining the military, that's for sure.
Particularly maybe not right now.
Not right now.
Not right now. It sounds like we have an opportunity to shift our understanding of the reality around us from that pattern recognition to being able to use our intuition and read energy.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the other things, like manifestation and other kind of stuff. Instead of being linear, pros and cons, build your list and all of that kind of stuff. No. It needs to be a balance between the logical kinds of stuff. I mean, you can't throw that out of the window. If big change or things are staring you in the face, you better think about it. Don't just say, "Oh, how do I feel?" I'm sorry, I'm a guy, right? And I'm an engineer, so that's okay. So no, but you got to get to this intuition, because you're into space that makes no sense in terms. You can't build your lists. You can't build your kind of Cartesian kind of relationships into this thing. And so you've got to be able to, that's an integral part of this. By the way, that is the alternative to all of the stuff that technocracy folks are trying to do. They're trying to wire you all up and tie you to the cloud and all of that kind of business. And the alternative is that we can go off in our own direction, and we can do everything that they say they can do.
Yeah, and that's the direction I'm going in. I'm sure that I'll see you there. Yeah. John, this has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. I just enjoy your thought process, the way that you look at the world, the whole thing. And I hope you'll come back. I would love to have a discussion about what we can look forward to. Like, what are the exciting changes that we're going to see in the middle that's going to make all this effort worthwhile.
Yeah, happy to do
Yeah,
that. And by the
all
way,
right.
your viewers can find out more about what we do at arlingtoninstitute.org.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about what you do there. I know that you have monthly seminars. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about what people can find with the Arlington
We
Institute.
we have a cluster of projects, programs that we do on a regular basis, and they're all focused on this transition to a new world. And one of them that you're maybe alluding to is called Transition Talks. And every month we bring a speaker. Penny Kelly will be with us on the 18th of May here in Berkeley Springs, and then we live stream it all over the world. And so every month we do that, and it's all about very interesting people. Greg Braden will be back in December. He comes every year. He's an integral part of a lot of things that we do here. And so that's called Transition Talks. We have a newsletter, a free newsletter that's called Future Edition that we publish every 2 weeks or twice a month, I guess. And that looks all across the horizon at all inbound kind of things and events that are all have influence on the future. I have a personal blog that I call Postscript, a video blog, and where once a week whatever ideas are on my mind, I talk about them for a while. A variation of that is the interviews, where we do interviews with different folks. We also answer questions once a month, and we have all of our people come in. And we've got a program called Quartet, where Penny Kelly and Greg Braden and Kingsley Dennis and I all get together and I moderate it. It's all about big ideas, and it's a good solid hour and a quarter long, in-depth, deep dive kind of look at some issue or problem or idea that is important going forward. And then Greg Braden and I do a thing called What's Up? And that's a kind of a half an hour unscripted kind of thing. I just say, so what's up, Greg? What have you been thinking about? And we just talk about whatever comes under our mind, which always turns out to be kind of interesting, by the way. And then we have other things, alerts and other such stuff. But again, you can find it all information at arlingtoninstitute.org.
And we'll have everything listed down below. John, thank you so much for today. Thank you, everyone. Bye now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Coming up next, this is a good one, or you might really like this one too. Either one of them could be perfect for you. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe.